We were dealing with this particular doubt towards the end of our discussion on verse number 13. If you remember, he was asking that when you are talking about that Atma is only truth and that is what is going to give me liberation, what is the point of having this long discussion about these five factors of karma siddhi? What is the point? Why should we be studying all that? Because you are asking that only when a person has become a sarva karma sannyasi, he is going to get moksha. All others will have to come back maybe with jnana adhikara sariras or with karma adhikara sariras. They will have to restart the process of self exploration. Therefore, he is explaining this, that please understand, cha karma karakani pancha pratipadyante ityatah sastra visheshanam kritanta iti. Bhagavan explains, look here, I have already told you that even the jnana yoga thing starts at the end of whatever has to be done has been done. So Vedanta is also referred to as Kritanta. That is the anta of all the karma kanda prakarana. So without completing your activities, you cannot go there. And therefore, Bhagavan says, in order for you to go beyond this game of karma, you need to understand the science of karma and how karmas are done. And if you are well equipped with a good understanding as to how you can adequately handle the repercussions of doing karma, what are the emergent outcomes, what are the factors responsible, how can you sort of tweak your movements and not get caught up with raga dvesha, the limitations. So you need to understand the science of karma. Therefore, he's saying kritam iti karma uchyate. Whatever is krita, that is what is karma. Tasya antaha karmasya karmanah antaha karman kritantaha parishamaptihi tattva jnana utpatya. And there the karma parishamapti, when it happens, jnane parisamaptate, only when you have atma jnana. Till you have reached atma jnana, you have to do these karmas, and therefore Bhagavan clarifies, tatra tasmin kritante. That means in that particular sastra, which begins after the science of karma comes to an end, proktani, prati, prasiddhani. Proktani means these are all well-known advices which are mentioned about jnana, about atma. Eva loka loke anatma bhutani eva atmataya. Why this karma happens? Because atma is nirlepa. He doesn't get trapped in anything. This atma doesn't get trapped in anything. But then we say, I am doing this. Vedanta says, no, you are not doing anything. The kartritva and bhoktritva, that you are the enjoyer, that you are the doer, this ahanta mamata is superimposed by your own ignorance. It says this, then how karma happens? He has to explain why we do karma. The process is like this. Loke, that means in normal, empirical phenomena, empirical reality with which we are connecting, we're dealing with, living our lives. Anatma bhutani, which are not atma bhuta. This all indriyas and this body and the mind, these are all anatma that we have studied. Anatma bhutani eva atmataya. We are confusing what is anatma as atma. That is the whole thing. So atma, anatma, viveka has not taken place. And therefore, we think, I am the doer, I'm a man, I'm a woman, all that. Taya mithya jnana arupena. Actually, all the time, we are nitya suddha buddha mukta. But then why do we behave as if we are prisoners of this body, this mind, these habits? Because of mithya jnana. We have this faulty understanding of ourselves as X, Y, Z, not as Atma. Grihita, grihitani atma tattva jnanena bada siddhe. So whatever is accepted as Atma because of wrong cognition or a faulty understanding, these are grihita. These are accepted by us because of some fault in our way of understanding. So then, jnanena, tattva jnanena vada siddhe. Now you see a mirage, you do not know how that happens, so you confuse that maybe as a water pool or as a lake, and you will move towards that when you're thirsty to quench your thirst. But then somebody explains, and you know you have done your science. No, that's a mirage. That's not a lake. Then this drishti, the pratyaksha, pramanena drishta, that lake, that water body you're seeing becomes badhita. It looks like a body, it's a water body, but it's not water body, even though it appears. That is how tasya tattva jnanena badasiddhe. This prapanchasya badasiddhe. This prapancha paramarthatvena not true, but it appears. It's empirically true. Heyatvena uktani. These are all mentioned so that you understand this is how karma happens, and then you always distinguish yourself, that is the pure self, from all these factors which result in karma siddhi. Yadahi anya dharma eva karma atmani avidya adhyarupitam iti uchyate. Because of these agyana adhyarupita, this karma, it's adhyarupita where? In Atma. And therefore it is said, tada suddha atma jnanena, then you have suddha atma jnana. Tada vadhat, and this particular faulty identification, that me karta hu, me kar raha hu, that particular identification gets weakened and then loses its force, and slowly you discard it. It falls off. Like the snake leaves his skin, you also drop your faulty self identity. Badhat karmano antah krito bhavati. Then end of karma, parisamapti, jnane parisamaptete bhavati. So this introduction is given to this verse number 14, saying that we are mentioning about what are the five factors, what are the factors of karma siddhi, not in order to empower you to get trapped in karma by getting to indulge in karma, but in fact to perform whatever karma you have been provided with, whatever you are born with. There are certain responsibilities because of prarabdha. Wherever you are, understand how they happen and then do them well, so that you can do them without identifying, without getting trapped therein. It's like if you are playing a game and you have a coach, or you have a coach and he's giving you a team meeting. So he says, okay, these team players have their two skillful players. If it's a football match, they'll say that, look, our defense has to be like this because the right out of our opposition is too fast, he can move too fast, so you have to have two guys to checkmate this guy's movement, isn't it? You plan it that way. So Bhagavan is telling that I'll tell you the secret of karma so that you can checkmate the negative influence of your participation in the karmas, so that you can get in there and you can come out. Like Padma Patram Ivam Bhasa. In water, this lotus leaf is there, but it doesn't get touched by water. Same way, you can be there in this karma yoga process without paying a price for it. That is karma bandha. That is the price we pay. But you will be bandha binirmukta because you will become a nishkama karma yogi. अतः आत्मनः कर्म संबंध प्रतिपादनाय अनात्म भूतानि एव पंचकर्म कारकाणि वेदांत शास्त्रे माया कल्पितानि. So these are all imagined, maya kalpitani, because they are because of vivartabhada, they appear as different entities, but everything is consciousness. But these are all projected like on a hologram, right? So what he's saying is that even though Atma cannot have any karma sambandha, because it is niskriya, nirakara, nirlepa, it cannot have any karma sambandha. So who is doing it? Okay, that is what we're going to explain. All the anatma things which you have imposed on yourself and you confuse that as atma. What we have studied in Tattva Bodha is going to come here, and we'll have a very good, beautiful summary of whole of Tattva Bodha in the next verse. So karma asambandha pratipadanaya, that atma is not a karmi. With your ahankara, you are the karta. Atma is not the karta. In order to explain this, anatma bhutani eva, this anatma five factors, he is going to explain. Karma karakani. What is karma? What is karta? What is karana? He'll explain all this. Vedanta Sastre. Maya kalpitani. These are explained as imaginary, not as completely false, but phenomenal, empirical, not fundamental. Anuditani iti, and they are translated out of the Vedanta Sastra. These are just kind of being repeated and elaborated. Anuvada is what is already mentioned in the text, and you have just explained it. So that's called translation. The translation here would essentially mean you kind of a rephrasing or expanding upon an original idea which has already been stated or revealed in the text. So now Advaita Atma Matra Tatparya Hanihi. And therefore, by talking about this karma science, the karmic science, the karma vijnana, the Atma is Advitya. This jnana is not getting affected. In fact, to verily re-establish this, we are talking about it. Because there could be a doubt who is a karta, who is a bhokta. Then Bhagavan is very intelligent. He is telling about how this karta and karaka and karana, all these together, create this process of karma so that you're constantly aware of the Atma Tattva as a nirlepa. So the karma sambandha of Atma is not there. That is what is being re-established, in fact, by talking about the science of karma and how we get involved in it or engaged in it. And there is Advityatva Hani of Atma, that Atma is getting trapped because we are talking like this, we are attributing agency to Atma. No, no. This understanding is not refuting Atma is Nirlepa. No, it's actually re-establishing. So it's like, uh, so uh, there is this head of family, okay? He's the patriarch or matriarch, he or she. And there is a particular time in the day where she plays with children and she behaves as if she is a child. Okay. And then there is a statement, my dadi, my grandma, was so much of a, she was indulging in so much a banter with us when she was so childish. In the diary, one of the grandchildren writes that the grandma was so childish and so full of fun and humor. But actually, she was a very grave and a very serious lady, and everybody respected her and obeyed her. This statement is not refuting or contradicting that other statement. In fact, it re-establishes that truth that she was most revered in the family, but then she made it a point to play with children like a child. So much and so intimately and so heartily that the grandchildren value that experience of having played with the grandma. And they're saying she was so bloody childish, so funny, so humorous. And she used to argue with us, she used to cheat us when we were playing cards. You know, this is essentially kind of reflecting the love they had for their grandma, who used to cheat them in the game. She used to be exactly like a quarrelsome child. So that's out of love and respect. That's not to say that the grandma was very, childish. Similarly, here, when this karma vijnana is being explained, this is essentially to tell us that Atma is not involved in any of these. We're talking about anatma padarthas. And then, again, to get jnana, to have vividisa, desire for self knowledge, that desire is born out of antakarna suddhi. Antakarna suddhi happens when we do karma yoga, nishkama karma yoga. Phala sangha tyaktatvena, without phala sangha. And therefore, tat angatvena. So this karma is anga of what? The sadhana of vividisa. Okay? Yagyena danena tapasa anasakena. The brahmana vividisanti. The Brahmins try to know that self by Jagyena Danena Tapasa, Vedanu Vachanena Yagyena Danena Tapasa Anasakena. What does it mean? These are all angas of the sadhana required for Antakarna Suddhi and Vibhidisha, desire for self knowledge. Without doing the karma, you can't reach there. Without taking a taxi, you won't reach the airport, and therefore you can't be airborne. So there is this karmic phase. Yeah, some people don't do it in this life. Doesn't mean they haven't done in the last life, because we are not looking at an individual is eka bhavika. You remember that we discussed yesterday, that everything happens during one life. We don't agree. We look at the life of a soul over different lives, millions and millions of lives. And therefore, Karma has to be there and it has to be understood. Then we can overcome it. Yahapi sarvakarmantatvam jnanasya pratipaditam. Jnana brings to an end all the karmas, all the engagements. Sarva karma khilam partha jnani parishamapyate. And we have studied that already in the, you know, 4.33 in the 4th chapter, 33rd verse there. Tasmad jnana sastrasya karmantatvam upapannam. So this jnana yoga, this particular Atma Tattva Vichara that we are going to do, there is a phase in it where we have to do the Karma Yoga, and therefore the verse number is coming, that verse number 14. Pramana Mulani Karma Karakani Pancha Atmanaha Akartutva Siddhyartham Heyatvani Heyatvena Jnantavyani Iti Ukte. Now, if you say that Atma to nirlep hai, kuch karta nahi hai, it doesn't do anything. Now, this karma karakani, whatever you are saying, they are, because Atma is akarta. So therefore, who is going to do it? And you have to explain to me what are these factors of doing karma siddhi. You explain, because you are removing Atma. Atma has no role. Then who has a role? Please explain to me. Head of the house has nothing to do with it. So who is doing all this? Please explain to me. Ityukte kani tani iti apekhyayam tatswarupam aha dvitiyena. Now, in the next verse, in the verse number 14, he's going to explain the karma vijnana. In fact, another 4 verses, he will deal with the same topic and he will slowly prepare us for the next level of understanding. Adhisthanam tatha karta karanam cha prithak vidham vividhasya prithak chesta daivam chaivatra panchamam. Adhisthanam. So first thing is the foundation. You want to play, you need a stage. So what is the stage for this game of karma happening? The platform or the stage is this body. Because without this body, we cannot have a mind, you cannot have desire, you need jnanendriyas, karmendriyas, but where can these jnanendriyas, karmendriyas stay without a foundation? That is this body, that is the adhisthana, that is the first factor. What is the second one? Tathakarta. Who is the karta? You have this kartutva bhava. Aham karomi iti. I am the doer. Don't you know? I talked like that. And in the meeting, they were criticizing. I gave a repartee and all fell silent. They didn't know what to say. This kartutva. That is ahankara. Some people say it is chidabhasa, and that is refuted because chidabhasa is kind of there in everyone. So karta is more rightly is kind of ahankara. Then karanam cha prithak vidham. Karanam is what? The 10 indriyas, but if you add mano, manas and buddhi, that can become 12. So karanam cha prithak vidham, and there are different kinds of instruments or tools or means for achieving anything. Now, in fact, to do anything, what do you need to know? You need to first know what is that work. And you must realize that it is kriti sadhya. It is desirable that you want to have it. So it should be kriti sadhya. And then it is under your control. First thing is desirable. And you can desire it if you want to play football on the moon. That is not kriti sadhya. So you will not desire it. So whether you can afford it, whether you can achieve it, whether you have the energies. Then yatate karoti. Then you will do yatna and you will perform it. Ichhati yatate karoti. So you will have desire. First you know it. Then you want to do it. Then you have some understanding of it. You get some idea. Otherwise, how do you do it? Then you will do yatna and you will complete that task. That is how it happens. So he's saying this karanamcha, and for doing this karoti, in order to know, you need jnanendriyas. In order to do ichhati, then that you require this manas, because you have some desire otherwise, and sankalpa also you require, plus you also need that nishyatmaka buddhi. The buddhi comes in. Yatate, then yatate karoti, then you want to do chesta, so you need also karma jnanendriyas to further connect with this reality, and you need the karma indriyas. That is how prithak vidham. Vividasya prithak chesta. And there are different kinds of prachestas, prakriyas, efforts that you do. What are these? Now, to start with, the one chesta which is constantly with us, all of us, is this whole prana thing, isn't it? Prana, pana, vyana, udana, samana, this 5. And then some people add another 5 there, and we'll discuss it. So some people say Panchadha, some people say Dasadha, the different kinds of processes we do. Like, for example, if you are going to be a sprinter, then you do different kind of breathing exercises. You build your strengths by preparing your lungs for it, your heart for it. Otherwise, your pulse rate and heartbeat will go beyond a certain level, like 130, 140. Then the guy will advise you can't do it. If there's a cardiologist or somebody, when you do these cardiac exercises, they tell you where to stop. How much can you sustain it? If it's already pulse is touching 150 or 145, should you run? And how long can you do it without pressuring the heart? I mean, that's one of the reasons why a lot of people have these heart attacks. So, Vividasya Prithak Chesta. And therefore, these Kriyas and the Prachestas are of different types. Daivam. But then, this Indriyas, if you remember, in the Tattvabodha we had discussed, that this Indriyas, this eye is a Golaka. Chakshya Golaka, that you see this eye, that is not this Indriya. The sense is something subtle, which is Atindriya. You cannot see it. If this eye was the one which is seeing, then they will say a lot of people who have perfect eyes, but they cannot see. Because eye is there when you lose the power of seeing because of some physical difficulty. So they kind of look at a subtle aspect to it, and they say there is a adhishtata devata. There is an Indriya Devata because of which you see. And then when the Indriya Devata is not kind to you, you might read things but you do not remember. It may not register with you. You might hear, but you may not make sense of it. Right? Similarly, each Indriya, Karmendriya or Jnanendriya, has a Adhishtata. There is a certain Devata. Okay? Adhishtatri Devata. So these are, and that is the Daivam. So there is a spiritual aspect to it. Remember, everything is ultimately consciousness. These are all upadhis. What is an upadhi? It's a name and a form. It's a certain brand, a label, which is put on that pure consciousness. And then we limit it and give it a name and form. And the one which is without name and form is that particular Chaitanya. And then Jadatvena and this and that, we are trying to look at everything, and then that is how the empirical reality appears as diverse, as multiple, constantly in a dynamic process of change. Something appears stable, something appears to change, right? That is how Vedanta explains it. So these are the 5. So Adhisthana, the body. Second, Karta, that Ahankara. Then the Indriyas, Prathakvidam. Vividasya Seshta, the breathing and other things, all kinds of prayatnas within this physical body, and Daiva, the spiritual aspect. These are the 5 factors which are responsible for any karma siddhi, that particular work. Whatever work we do, we are able to do it because of the interplay of these factors. Now, we will deal with the commentary, and this is very interesting, very rich commentary of Madhusudana Saraswati. I'm not getting into Sankaracharya's commentary again because it's kind of is covered by Madhusudana, so there's no point doing it again. Now, first, what is the Sarira? He's explaining. Ichha dvesa sukha dukkha chetanadi avivyaktehe asrayo adhishtanam. What is adhishtanam? Is asraya, which gives space. It gives support to what? It gives space and asraya to what? Ichha, dvesha, sukha, dukkha, chetana. You remember in the chapter 13, all these were referred to as kshetra. You remember that? Yeah. Chetana, dhriti, all these are kshetras. So this kshetra is actually sarira, the sula sarira, and that they are included here. Ichha, dvesa, sukha, dukkha, chetanadi, avivyaktehe, which are manifesting, these things are manifesting. Asrayo adhishtanam, that particular thing that is the body, sarira. Then we'll discuss about karta, tatha karta. Yatha adhishtanam anatma. This particular body, is it atma? No, anatma. Anatma bhautikam maya kalpitam. This body is maya kalpita. That is why we're identifying with this. And he says that I am this body, but I am not this body. I'm fat, I'm thin, I'm handsome, I'm ugly. All these are what? Identification with a maya kalpita sarira. Swapna griha rathadivat tatha. For example, how is this body, this empirical reality explained in Vedanta? They compare this with things we see in dream. Jatha swapna griha. The house is not real, but you are sleeping in that house in the dream. You are actually sleeping on your bed, but you see that you are sleeping in a huge palace. You are the king, the emperor, and there are 20 lions playing around in the courtyard, and there are about 120 beautiful women who are at service, and you have 500 generals. You have a lovely dream. Are they real? No, swapna by nature. They are all swapna kalapita. Swapna, grihadi, griha rathadi, and there is a big cart, a ratha, and you are sitting on that, the horse cart, and it's pulling you. So, rathadiva tatha kartaham. Same way, the way this body is anatma, this karta, aham, this ahankara vritti, koromi ityadi abhimanavan, jnana sakti pradhana. This particular ahankara is what? It's not kriya sakti pradhana, it's jnana sakti pradhana. It's a very subjective power that you have, right? It has something to do with your mana, buddhi, chitta, ahankara. Together they are antakarana. So we are referring to here antakarana. Okay? Pradhana, pradhana, apanchikrita pancha mahabhuta karya ahankaro antakaranam. So this is what is saying. This ahankara antakarana is the karta. And you remember how it is created, right? So the apanchikrita panchamahabhuta, which are there, the tanmatras, out of which samasti, a combination of all of them, and out of that, this ahankara, antakarana is created. And what was the explanation in Tattvabodha? Because mana, because the indriyas are connected with only one particular bhuta, like akasha, stotra indriya. You have this agni, then chakshu, darshana indriya, grana, then gandhavatvam, prithvi, right? That is how we are connecting. But here, you need the mind or antakarana behind all these indriyas for appreciation of reality. गंध का भी ज्ञान कब होगा? जब बुद्धि हो तब ना. नहीं तो स्वप्नावस्था हम सोए रहते हैं, वहां पे there is a lovely fragrance, somebody has brought and gifted you with some sandalwood oil, which is very costly. He keeps it next to you, and you are lying on your bed. Would you know? You are enjoying the smell, but you don't know it. So the Gandha Grahana happens only when the manas is there, Antakarana is active. Therefore, the Antakarana is out of the samasti of these five tanmatras. That's what we had studied. That's the same thing, apanchikrita. It's not panchikrita, because once it becomes panchikrita, this stula bhuta is created, out of which the sarira is created. Apanchikrita panchamahabhuta karya is a consequence, a outcome, a product of that ahankara, antakaranam, buddhir vijnanam ityadi paryaya sabda vachyaha. The same ahankara or this antakarana sometimes is referred to as manas or sometimes is referred to as buddhi. Tadatmya adhyasena atmani. And then, because of this tadatmya adhyasa, you identify with it very strongly, atmani, and you identify the atma as the karta. So there is this antakarana, the subjectivity of us. We are confusing the self, pure self, which is nirlepa, with the subjectivity. And then this ahankara becomes the self. That is what is explained here. Atmani kartutvadi dharma aropa hetuhu anatma. So this ahankara is anatma, and this is the cause. It ensures that superimposition of this anatma thing on the atma, on the nirlepa, the pure. This is the impure ahankara superimposed on the pure self. Then the ahankara is confused as atma. Anatmani atma buddhi, atasmin tad buddhi. Right? That is what is the wrong understanding that we have. Okay? Buddhi. So antakaranam buddhi. Okay. Kartutvadi dharma adhyaropa hetuhu anatma bhautikaha. And it's also jada, bhautika. Maya kalpitascha iti tatha sabdabdaha. Tatha karta. Why is he saying tatha karta? Sarira or karta, mana buddhi, sab kshetra hi hai. So these are all anatma vastu. Stula sarirasya loka yatikaihi atmatmena parigrahitasya api anyaihi परिक्यकैः अनात्मत्वेन निश्चयात् तद दृष्टान्तेन तार्किकादिभिः आत्मत्वेन परिगृहीतस्य कर्तुः अपि अनात्मत्व निश्चयः शूकर इत्यर्थः. He's making an academic point, and it's not very difficult to understand. What he's trying to say is the Charpak, we have discussed that many times, they don't accept Panchabhuta, they don't accept Akasa. So you have these Chaturbhutas, and then if you ask them where from consciousness comes, they have consciousness is a product of material reality. So they say that the way if you are chewing betel nuts and then you add a bit of chuna or limestone, the powder, and then you add a bit of katha, okay, that particular herb, and then you chew them with betel leaves and betel nuts, you chew together, there is some redness as if it's lipstick, right? Your lips all become red. You're chewing that pan, betel nuts. Okay. Now, this redness has no original existence. You combine these things, the redness is produced. Same way, he's saying that the consciousness is produced when these four bhutas, Prithvi, Jala, Vayu, and Apa, and Agni, Teja, when they come together, the consciousness can be created. The challenge that others pose is, if that is the case, why isn't a dead body walking? Then they will say, no, there's a particular way of connectivity, blah blah blah. They can say this. So they are like physical scientists, and that's one of the reasons the Charvak Mata is very popular among Marxists and among Western materialists. They were the Indian materialists. Nothing wrong. That's a perspective. That is a school of thought. Now, the Nyaya Mata of Gautama Muni, Akhyapada, he is saying that Atma is also Jara. Atma is Bibhu. It's a subtle thing. It's everywhere, sarvavyapta. But Atmas are many. Every human being has one Atma in him. But it's a Bibhu Padartha like Akasha. Akasha is infinite. Same with this Atma is there everywhere. And whatever we know, we connect with it through our senses. And then there is a connection between these, mana, chakshu, and there is this indriya and mano sanyoga happens. And then Atma mano sanyoga. So there is a parampara sambandha, indirect relationship. And then this particular thing, this awareness of this, it's a kind of, it blooms as if the Atma blooms. And this jnana thing happens. Whenever the jnana happens, then that is how they're explaining this whole thing. What is Atma? The jnana stays there in a relationship of what they call inherence or samavaya sambandhena jnana utpadyate. That's what they say. Now, that is refuted here. Even that Atma for us is anatma because they themselves say jada. The Nayakas say this. He's saying if you can refute Charvaka, the great theoreticians of what is Atma, what is Anatma, mostly the Vedantists, have thoroughly, without leaving any doubt, have refuted the theory of Atma proposed by the Nyayikas, the logicians, Indian logicians. Okay, that is the simple point he's trying to say. Karanam, the third one. Karanam cho sotradi. So you have these five Gyanendriyas. Sabdadi upalabdhi sadhanam. So you are hearing. Upalabdhi is what? Realization, understanding, appreciation of that particular thing, or what you call appreciation or apprehension of truth or reality. So you have different kinds of apprehensions. Apprehensions is appreciation or relating to, making sense of, in that sense. Upalabdhi sadhanam. Cha sabdah tatha iti anukarshartha. So karanam cha prithak vidha. In order to connect it, they have put it. Prithak vidham, that means nana prakaram, pancha jnanendriyani, pancha karmendriyani, mana buddhi cha iti dvadasa sankhyam. Shankaracharya says the same thing. They are counting that as 12. Okay. They could have, because ahankara they are putting in karta. So manabuddhi ahankara, manabuddhi chitta ahankara. So the antakaranam or ahankara together they are putting it. The funny part of Vedanta is that in different contexts they keep shifting and shuffling and using the same word for different purposes. That is why unless we study with one kind of an acharya who puts it in the parampara of the flow of understanding, we will misunderstand it. That is why Shankaracharya says that However well-read a person may be, if he's not a parampara Ved, you avoid him because he'll mislead you. He doesn't know where he is going. If he knows he's part of this parampara, you are much better placed to study with him because then you can know what are the limitations and strengths of that parampara. Similarly, in the West, if you are in a philosophy class, you always try to find out from others, okay, what is the point of view of this professor? It's much easier for you to understand whatever he's saying after you know what's his perspective, because accordingly he will interpret each and every philosopher he's teaching in the class. Similarly, here you should not get confused because in Advaita Vedanta, like Purusha and Prakriti, sometimes Purusha is referring to that ultimate Purusha. Sometimes Purusha is referring to as what? That Kshetra Kshetrajna, that Para Prakriti is referring to as Purusha. And so these are the confusions. And you can get misled if you just look at the main slokas. That's why these commentaries are very useful. Dvadasa Sankhyam. So, 5 karmendriyas, 5 jnanendriyas, manaha, and buddhi. That's how they become 12. Karanavarge mano buddhischa iti vritti vishesau vrittihi vrittimanstu ahankara karta eva. This mano and buddhi, they have their own vrittis. What is vritti? Vritti is a sambandha, is a relationship. So without vritti, you cannot connect with an external object in Vedanta. So there is a vritti, right? So because of this vritti, and they will talk about, that jnana, this whole process of pramana, that is a particular vritti, and there is a phala vyapti and there is a vritti vyapti. So the vritti will be there. And sometimes, but in phala vyapti is there when you are touching a particular finite object. But when you are being aware of yourself, that Atma, so there is this vyapti, vritti vyapti, but phala vyapti is not there because there is no external object to it, and then we will go there when it comes. There's an interesting debate there. Okay. Manobuddhischa iti dvadasa sankhyam. Karnamarge manobuddhischa iti vritti vishesho vrittim. Vrittimangstu ahankara eva. These manobuddhi are there, but actually the manobritti or buddhyatmaka vritti, all this can happen only if there's an agent, and that is the ahankara, karta eva. That is the karta, different from this karanas. Chidabhasastu sarvatra eva avishishtaha. He's refuting the point of view of Sridhara here, Sridhara Swami, and therefore he's saying some people confuse the karta as Chidabhasa, but Chidabhasa is common to all. There's nothing special about it, and it cannot be, it's like a mirror on which something gets reflected. Ahankara is the karta, not the Chidabhasa, he's saying. Vividha nana prakaraha panchadha dasadhava prasiddhaha. What are the cheshtas he's now talking about? Cha sabdah tatha iti anukarsartha. So you want to say cha means tatha. He just wants to say this. Prithak asankirnaha. What is prithak? Why is the prithak vidha? Why is he saying asankirnaha? Means they are amishita, different. Cheshtaha. These are the asankirnaha cheshta. What are these cheshta? Kriya rupaha. Kriya sakti pradhana apanchikrita panchamohabhuta karyaha. How the pancha jnanendriyas are formed and karmendriyas are formed, you remember in Tattvabodha? Of the sattvika angsha of the 5 tanmatras or the apanchikrita pancha mahabhutas of the sattva angsha, because they are all maya products. These pancha tanmatras or the apanchikrita pancha mahabhutas, what are they? Products of maya. Maya is trigunatmika, and there is a sattva, rajas, and tamas. If sattva, tama, and rajas is there, this panchabhuta will also have sattva, rajas, and tamas aspects to it. And out of the sattva aspects of these apanchikrita pancha mahabhutas, we have pancha jnanendriyas. Of the rajas angsha, the raja aspect of these pancha mahabhutas, we have the pancha karmendriyas. And of the tamas aspect, we have the panchikrita, we have the sthula sharira. The pancha mahabhutas, the sthula bhutas are created. And out of that sthula bhuta, we have the sthula sharira coming in. Okay. Now, he's saying Sakti Pradhana, Kriya Pradhanyena. Okay, so Sakti Pradhana pancha mahabhuta karyaha. So Kriya Pradhanyena vaya viyatvena. So when they become Jnana Pradhana, they are Jnanendriyas. And then when they become Kriya Pradhana, They can be karmendriya also, but here he's talking about chesta, vayavya chesta, the breathing processes, vyapadishamanaha, and they are referred to as chesta because without breathing, nothing happens. What are they? Prana, pana, vyana, udana, samanaha. So these are the ones. Some people add another five, and we generally read again and again while reading commentaries and we forget them, but let's read them. Naga, Kurma, Krikala, Devadatta, Dhananjaya. These are the another five. Okay. Now, Naga, so the Prana, Pana, Vyana, Udana, Samana, you have studied what the functions they have, right? This Naga, they are saying, sometimes you have this belching, right? You do the belching, so that Naga Vayu is responsible. Then sometimes you sometimes open your eyes, close your eyes. They say that there is this kurma. There's another kind of vayu which enables these eyes to blink. And then krikala. Krikala refers to this pipal tree, and krikala creates that hunger in you. That vayu creates hunger in you. Devadatta, then you have this yawn. You yawn at times, right? So he's saying Devadatta Vayu. That is responsible for it. Dhananjaya is Poshana, who holds this whole body together. Okay. So these are, some people say that these Panchavayus can be Antarbhukta in the Prana, Pana, Vyana, Udana, Samana. Some people also say this Antarbhuta Eva. Atracha Susupto Antakarnasya Kartruhu Layepi. Now, when this ahankara, what happens to ahankara when we go to sleep? Ahankara also becomes absent. It gets into the seed form. The computer enters the sleep mode. Similarly, the ahankara, mana, buddhi, they all enter into the sleep mode. Of course, the modern science very well says the mind keeps working even in deep sleep, isn't it? Okay, well, that's another story. We'll go there. Now, so when you have the karta layepi, it enters into the sleep mode. Prana vyapara darsanat. Do you stop breathing? No. So the chestas are going on. This panchada dasadava, they're going on. Darsanat bheda vepadesat cha antakarnat atyanta bhinna eva prana iti kechit. Some people say that the prana and the antakarana are completely different from each other. Okay, prana is a completely different thing because they will quote from Vedanta, the Upanishadic stories, where these panchendriyas they were having a fight, and they go to Prajapati and they are saying, "Who is greatest amongst us?" He said, "Okay, one by one, you try to leave the body and see whether the body can hold or not." So one of them goes, the eye goes, and the person becomes blind, but he can still continue. The ability to speak goes, but this fellow becomes dumb, but he continues to live. But finally, when prana starts going, then they know that they cannot be there anymore because prana is the one who sustains the whole human system and therefore says, "You are our king." So it's like this internal, the Gyanendra, whatever, they're saying, end of the day, you are the one, and therefore there is a bit of prana upasana. So your mind may be running around. There's another story that how the Daityas are trying to corrupt these Indriya Devatas. But finally, these Indriya Devatas, the eye can get corrupted, so it keeps something for itself. It wants to enjoy something of itself. It becomes selfish because of this Daitya Buddhi, the evil thing, the sinfulness that comes with it. But finally, the prana, there is no vikalpa. So the devatas are hiding behind this Indriya devatas are hiding. How do you do Indriya Nigraha? There is a secret there. If your mind is too disturbed and you are not being able to control. Now, a lot of very good coaches and counselors, they also advise this, how to deal with any panic attacks. I was listening to a very good video and he was explaining that if you just continue to breathe steadily for 30, 45 times, the panic attack, which can suddenly happen, you maybe you're about to catch a flight, or suddenly you get an information that your daughter is not well, or there is a performance appraisal meeting, and suddenly there's a panic attack. People have palpitations, and heartbeat goes up, and the blood pressure goes up, and that fellow can faint. All these things happen. What a lot of these very well trained coaches and counselors advise, Just sit and breathe. Watch your breathing. Just breathe 50 times, 100 times. After some time, the panic is delusional. It goes away. It has no relevance. Once you surrender to it, it will kill you. You will take a wrong decision, that's all. You will take some wrong decision and you will pay for it. Whenever there's a panic attack or there's some kind of a upsurge of a traumatic emotion, most likely it will drive you to a wrong decision. So they're saying you take shelter in prana, do pranayama, just quietly breathe, forget about the whole world. Prana is the king. It's not affected by the daityas, and therefore the prana saves us. So when we sleep, the prana is still continuing, and therefore antakarana and prana are completely different. That is what some people say. If you say they are completely different, do you know what problem we will have as Vedantis? We cannot accept any Bheda as Paramarthika. The moment we say Manas and these Antakarana and this Prana are fundamentally different, we will be in a fundamental problem. Why? Ultimately for us, Ekam Eva Advitiyam. Neha Nanasti Kinchana. There's only one thing. And then what about this Mana Buddhi Ahankara you're talking about? Upadhi Vedat. These are labels. So ultimately, the prana and antakarana, so far you say that analytically distinguishable, upadhi vedat, we have no problem. If you say fundamentally different, I'm sorry, in our scheme of things, nothing can be fundamentally different from another thing. Ultimately, everything that we see as different is ultimately one and the same. Therefore, there's a bit of an academic debate here, and I'm just alerting you because it can be a little confusing, but then it's very simple. So, we will be dealing with a few sentences, which is essentially trying to re-establish the Vedantic message that prana and this antakarana are essentially one. But upadhi veda, they are different, not a problem. That's not a problem for us. And he's explaining. Iti kechi, some people say prana and this antakarana are fundamentally different. Kriya Sakti, Jnana Sakti, Mad, Ekam Eva. This Kriya Sakti and Jnana Sakti, these are Mad. And this particular thing, the Jivatma, is one Eva. Jivatva Upadhi Bhutam, Apachikrita Pancha Mahabhuta Karyam. Actually, he's saying that this Kriya Sakti and Jnana Sakti Pradhanyena, one becomes Prana, Kriya Sakti Pradhanyena, and Jnana Sakti Pradhanyena, the other one becomes Karta Ahankara. And all both creation of the apanchikrita pancha mahabhuta. Kriya Sakti Pradhanyena Prana iti Jnana Sakti Pradhanyena cha Antakaranam iti Vyapadisyate iti Abhyuktaha. The wise men talk like this. And he is explaining with a lot of proof this particular view, which is Vedantic. Sa ikshan chakre kasminnu aham utkranta bhavishyami kasena va pratisthite pratishthishyami iti sa pranam asrujata. So there is this dialogue in Vedanta, the Prashna Upanishad 6.3, where he's saying, किसका उत्क्रांति होने पर मेरा उत्क्रांत हो जाएगा, कि कौन रहने पर मैं प्रतिष्ठित हो पाऊंगा. Then therefore prana was created. That is the fundamental thing. So for prana is there, this whole jivatma is there. Prana moves away, jivatma follows. The subjective antakarana follows that. Iti sruta utkranti utkrantyadi upadhitvam pranasya uktam. See this utkramana, it goes and comes down, it stays. These are upadhis. These are names given to the movement of prana. Tatha sudhi swanurupa bhutva eva lokam atikramati mrityo rupani dhyayativa lilayativa. This atma is not having any movement, but it appears as if dhyayativa lilayativa. It is moving or it's still, it is an appearance. And this is, I think, this is from another Upanishad, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 437. It is taken from there. Ityadi sruto utkrantyadi upadhitvam buddhehe uktam. So these are the upadhis of the buddhi, the antakarana. Because our papa punyas will have to go, right? Otherwise, we'll not have swarga sukha. What is the balance in us, in our purse? In our purse, we'll have some papa punya. So we need a lot of punya in our purse to go to swarga. And therefore, he's saying that. So, Swatantrapi Upadhi Vedecha Jiva Veda Prashangaha. So, if you, the Jiva, and because of this Buddhi Veda, a different kind of, buddhi, but if we consider this Upadhi Veda is independent, then there'll be a little conflict, as if these things are all fundamentally different and there will be different kind of jivas, and if there are different kind of jivas, Vedanti is at fault. Vedanti gets defeated. Tasma बुद्धि प्राणयोर एकत्वेन, बुद्धि और प्राण एक ही है, तब भी एव उत्क्रांत्यादि उपादित्यम युक्तम भेद व्यपदेशश्च, भेद व्यपदेश, फिर the distinction, how do we explain? Sakti भेदात. What are these two Saktis? The Kriya Sakti and Jnana Sakti. Kriya Sakti pradhanyena, it's prana. Jnana Sakti pradhanyena, antakarana. Okay, that is the basic argument. Susupta ucho Jnana Sakti भागलयेपि, वही जो जीवात्मा है उसका ज्ञान शक्ति भाग स्लीप मोड में चला जाता है, इन डीप स्लीप. क्रिया शक्ति भाग दर्शनम एकत्वेपि न विरुद्धम अनुभव सिद्धत्वात्. Even though Kriya Shakti stays, Jnana Shakti goes, we have no problem. They are two different aspects of that same Jivatma. Drishti Srishti Nai. So Srishti is a creation of how we see it. That is Drishti Srishti Vada. Sarvalayepi, everything comes to, in the deep sleep. And even in these pralaya avastha, prana vyaparavat sarirasya susupta ayam ityevam rupam parehi kalpitatvacha. Because everything, even this body, susupti avastha mein sarir rahta hai, pran rahta hai. But the Drishti Shrishtivadi say everything is like a dream. Nothing is acceptable. Tasmat ubhayathapi vyapradesa bhedaha upapannaha. So you can see them as analytically distinct, but don't say that this buddhi or antakarana and prana are two different fundamental entities. Then the Vedanta will be in a problem. Okay. Now the daivam, that we'll quickly do. It will take 2-3 minutes. These 5 antakaranas, the daiva word is coming. What is the daiva? That is the 5th factor. So anugrahaka devata jatam. There are some gods or the divinities who are anugrahakas, who help us achieve things. So, why we should do some prayer every day or remain oriented towards divine? Because without that daiva thing, nothing happens. That grace, that anugraha is always required. Cha sabdas tatha iti anukarshanartha. The same thing, cha, tatha, that is, in that sense it is like cha. Atra Karanavarge Panchamam. This is the 5th one, that sloka end, that Panchamam, Panchama Sankhya Puranam. That is why it is the 5th one. That is why he's writing in the verse, Siddhe Sarva Karmanam Protano. The 14th verse, what does he say? Cha Daivam Cha Eva Atra Panchamam. This is the 5th one. That is that Sankhya Puranam. He's saying this. Eva Sabdaha, okay. Then Eva Sabdaha Tatha Savdena Sambadhyamana Anatmatva Bhautikatva Kalpitadvadi Avarnartha Panchanam Api. So Eva. Why is he writing this word Eva? Cha Eva Daivam Cha Eva Atra Panchamam. That Eva Sabda. In order to explain, these are all being connected with the Atma, but these are all imagined. That's why aise hi hai. That's why he's mentioning that. Tatra sarirasya kartra karana kriya adhishtanasya devata prithvi. Sarir ka adhishtata devata deva prithvi. By the way, devata is a Strilinga sabda and prithvi is also Strilinga. Yatrasya purushasya mritasya agnim vag apyeti Bhatam prana chakshuru adityam dishaha stotram manas chandram prithivim sariram iti srutau. So there is this Shruti Vakya and he's explaining it. So what is this? Vag is Agni, fire is the Adhishtata Devata of our ability to speak. And that is why they speak they give a lot of ghee. You drink a lot of ghee to, they say that you will be a great speaker because ghee is kind of symbolically representative of fire. Apyeti Vatam Pranaha, air, the god of air is the Adhishtata Devata Prana. Chakshu Adityam, of the eye, is Aditya, Lord Sun. Dishaha Sostram, because Akasa, in Akasa the sound stays, so the Dik Devata is the Adhishtata Devata, of the ears, or the hearing capacity or faculty. Manas Chandraha, Manas, if you are very person is very disturbed, what we call him? Lunatic. A lot of people say that the mind, the brain, that liquid substance, like you have the ebb and tide, so there are certain fluctuations, and the mind kind of becomes a little troubled during both new moon and full moon nights, and there are a lot of stories about it. So, Manas Chandram Prithivim Sariram iti Sruto. Bhagadi Adhisthanatraya Adhisthana Adhisthanatragnadivhi Agnyadivhi Saha Sarira Adhishtatyatvena Prithvi Pathat. So he's kind of saying this Kartra Ahankarasya Adhishtatri Devata Rudraha. This has come in Tattvavada, isn't it? Ahankara of the Antakarna, Manabuddhi Chitta Ahankara. So what do you have? The Adhishtata Devata, Adhishtatri Devata of Ahankara is Rudraha, Puranadi Prasiddhaha. Karnanam cha adhistatro devataha suprasiddhaha. Sotra, twak, chakshu, rashana, grananam, dik, whatever was mentioned here is repeating it, and vata, air of twak, sparsha, and arka is sun of chakshu, and rasana, pracheta, varuna devata, because it is jala, and grana is Aswini Kumaras, Aswinaha. Bakpani Pada Payupasthanam, Bakpani Pada, these are the Karmendriyas, Vak Sakti, Vak, Banni, fire, and Pani, hands, Indra, and Pada is Upendra, that is Lord Vishnu, and Payu, the flushing out, the rectum, it's Mitra, and Upastha, the Jananendriya, genitals, is Prajapati. Why? Because that is the reproductive organ. Mana Buddhyos Chandra Brahaspati iti. And Buddhi, who is the Adhishatri Devata, is Brahaspati, because he is the Devaguru, and Manas, the head of it, is Chandra iti. Pancha Prananam Kriya Rupanam, and all these five, they have their Adhishtatri Devatas, Prana, Sadhya Jata, Vamadeva, Aghora, Tat Purusha, Ishanaha. These are the five devatas of these Pancha Pranas. Bhasye Daivam Adityadi Chakshu Adi Anugrahakam iti Adhishtanadi Devatanam api Upalakshanam. So in the Bhasya, that means in Shankara Bhasya, what is mentioned is saying that is Upalakshana for this Daivam when it's mentioned. Okay, this is how we could not go to the verse number 15. Let's do the Ucharanam. So this is very easy. It's very easy. So we'll do the commentary tomorrow, but I'm just doing the Ucharanam. Okay, otherwise we'll start it tomorrow. Okay, we'll stop here. You have any questions, Chinmay, or we can do the Shanti Mantra?
We can do the Shanti Mantra.
Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti 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 Shankar